Every Friday night, like clockwork, Clarence Donald drove the same two-lane road that cut through the quiet edges of Savannah. His old Ford Ranger rattled like it always did, coughing twice before falling silent in the narrow parking space outside Jean's Roadhouse Grill. A familiar sound, a familiar stop inside the neon sign buzzed faintly, half letters flickering, half gone. The scent of grilled steak and coffee thickened the air, mixing with laughter from regulars who'd been sitting there for years. Clarence had his corner booth, the one by the window, and he liked it that way. Routine was peace for him. He wasn't there for company, never had been. He came for silence, a hot meal, and a moment to think, or not to think at all. Emily, the new waitress, couldn't have been more than 23. Nervous hands, kind eyes, always moving like the world might collapse if she stood still too long. It was her third week working there, and she'd learned one thing. Clarence Donald didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. She approached his booth with a small smile. Same as last week? Clarence nodded. Ribeye, medium rare, mashed potatoes. Sweet tea. She jotted it down, turned, then stopped. Something flickered across her face. She leaned in closer, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't be here tonight, Mr. Donald." Clarence looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. What's that supposed to mean? She hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the bar. 3 men had just walked in. Leather jackets. Boots heavy on the floor. Patches with skulls, eagles, flags. The kind of men who walked into a room like they owned the air everyone else breathed. Clarence's jaw tightened. He'd seen their kind before, too many times, in too many places. The waitress whispered again. "They've been asking about you all week." The 3 spread out like wolves, one by the jukebox, one near the counter, one staring straight at Clarence. The tallest, with a scar down his cheek, smiled like someone who'd already decided how the night would end. Clarence put down his fork. His voice was calm, steady, old steel under velvet. "Tell me something, Emily. Do you scare easy?" She blinked. "Sometimes. Then do yourself a favor. When the time comes, don't watch." The leader approached. His boots echoed across the diner tiles. The bar chatter died. The laughter evaporated. Even the neon hum seemed to fade. "Well, well," the man said. "Look who it is, the old man who thinks he's still a hero." Clarence didn't move. "You boys got something to say. Say it standing still." The man slammed a hand on the table. "You turned in our friend to the cops last week. Now he's rotting in a cell." Clarence stared back, unblinking. He killed a kid. The biker leaned in closer, breath reeking of whiskey. "You don't get to decide who pays." Clarence's voice dropped, low and certain. "I don't decide. Justice does." The man grabbed his collar, and that was the last mistake he made dot in one smooth motion. Clarence's hand snapped up, twisting the man's wrist backward. A flash of motion. The biker's face hit the table with a dull crack. Plates rattled. Glasses fell. The entire diner gasped dot the second man lunged. Clarence sidestepped, grabbed his jacket, used his momentum, and sent him crashing into a booth. The third came swinging with a knife rookie mistake. Clarence ducked, swept his leg, disarmed him, and the blade clattered across the floor dot. It was over in 10 seconds. The 3 men groaned on the ground, while Clarence straightened his flannel and picked up his hat. "Some people never learn manners," he muttered, dropping a 20 on the table. "Sorry for the mess." Emily stood frozen, heart pounding. What was that? Clarence glanced at her, calm as ever. Just another Friday. He turned to leave, but the scarred man spat blood and growled. "You think this is over, old man?" Clarence paused at the door, glanced back, eyes cold and sharp. "No," he said, "but you are." He stepped into the rain. The downpour hissed against the pavement, neon lights blurring into reflections on wet asphalt. Clarence climbed into his truck, the engine rumbling like distant thunder. Through the rearview mirror, he saw Emily standing in the doorway, eyes wide, watching him drive away. She didn't know that Clarence wasn't just another regular. He'd been more than that, once. Flashback, 20 years ago, the desert heat shimmered over a foreign horizon. Clarence wore a uniform then, one marked by dust, blood, and discipline. He'd been a military instructor, the kind who trained soldiers not just to fight, but to survive. They called him Iron Hand. Not because he was cruel, but because he never broke under pressure. Until the mission that did break him, a convoy ambushed. A team he couldn't save, a radio call that came too late. He carried those ghosts home with him, every single one. And every Friday night, sitting in that diner, he tried to forget their faces for just an hour, but peace never lasts. A week after the diner fight, Clarence's truck sat outside his house. Quiet suburban street, same routine. He was fixing the porch light when he heard tires screech. Headlights cut through the dark. A motorcycle stopped at the end of his driveway. The scarred man was back. But this time, he wasn't alone. 4 more bikes rolled up behind him, engines growling. Clarence wiped his hands on a rag, sighed, and walked down the steps. "Didn't I already teach you this lesson?" he said. The scarred man laughed. "You think you can take all of us?" Clarence shrugged. "You came here to find out." The next few seconds were chaos. Engines revved, boots pounded gravel. One came swinging with a chain, another with a bat. Clarence moved like the years hadn't touched him. Every strike was precise: deflect, counter, disable. A chain yanked. Clarence grabbed it midair, twisted, pulled the biker forward, and slammed him against the hood. Another charged. Clarence ducked and swept his leg out from under him. 5 men down, the 6th stood frozen. Clarence's voice was calm. "Tell your friends Savannah's not the place for cowards. Next time, bring sense instead of numbers." The man backed away, stumbling, then fled into the night. Clarence stood still in the rain, breathing steady. His porch light flickered again, half broken, same as before. He stared at it for a long moment, then went back inside, closing the door behind him. 2 days later, Emily found his number on the diner's receipt. She called him. Her voice was soft, worried. "Mr. Donald, those men came back. They were looking for you." "I know," he said quietly. "They already found me." "Why don't you go to the police?" she asked. Clarence gave a dry chuckle. "Sometimes the law doesn't stop evil. It just files the paperwork after." There was silence. Then she said, "You saved my life that night." Clarence paused. "No, Emily, I just did what was right." She hesitated. "You don't have to be alone, you know?" He didn't answer, just ended the call, and stared out the window at the endless road beyond his porch. 1 week later, the reckoning, the same diner, the same booth. But this Friday night was different. The room was quiet, no laughter, no music. Outside, several motorcycles lined the lot. Clarence knew what that meant. He'd come anyway. He didn't run from storms. He walked into them. He sat, ordered his meal, and waited. Minutes later, the door opened. The entire gang walked in. Not 3, not 5, 10 of them. Emily's voice trembled. "Mr. Donald, please." He smiled faintly. "Go to the back, Emily." They surrounded his booth like predators. The scarred man grinned. "Didn't learn your place, did you?" Clarence stood slowly, meeting his gaze. "Funny, that's exactly what I was about to say to you." The first punch came fast. Clarence ducked. A plate shattered, chairs toppled. The room exploded into chaos, fists, glass, shouting. Clarence moved like instinct itself, controlled and brutal. Every motion economical, every strike with purpose. One by one, they fell, broken noses, split lips. Pride scattered across the floor. When it ended, only the scarred man was left standing. He lunged with a knife. Clarence caught his wrist mid-air, turned, twisted, and pinned him against the counter. The knife clattered to the ground. Clarence leaned close. You think you're strong because you scare people? But real strength doesn't scream. It endures. Then he let him go. The man collapsed, gasping. Clarence turned to Emily, who stood behind the counter, tears in her eyes. It's over, he said softly. She shook her head. For them, maybe, but what about you? Clarence looked around the wrecked diner. Broken glass, overturned chairs, the smell of rain drifting in through the open door. He smiled faintly. Me? I'll be fine. I always am. He dropped a few bills on the counter. For the damages, Emily stepped forward. You could have killed them. Why didn't you? Clarence paused at the door. Because I already know what that costs. He walked out into the rain again. Same road, same night, same silence. But something had changed. The world would never know his story. No headlines, no glory. Just a man who didn't need saving because he had already saved enough. The rain kept falling, washing away the blood, the fear, and the noise. All that remained was the sound of a truck engine fading into the dark, and a waitress watching from the doorway, whispering a prayer for the man who had finally found peace in a world that forgot how to give it.